I'm just going to link to this list.
All right, I do think we are good to go here. Apologize for the technical difficulties. All right, everyone, welcome to In Depth with Indies, the Excessively Average Gamers podcast. We have Jason here. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself and the game you're making?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Jason. I'm 1/3 of Stray Basilisk, and we're working on a game called Steamhounds, which is a turn-based tactical game where you take control of a team of mercenaries who go on missions, kind of doing the dirty work for various factions who are vying for control of a big kind of industrial steampunk city. So it's a multiplayer-focused game, and gameplay-wise, it kind of bridges the gap between like a JRPG, like a Final Fantasy, old-school Final Fantasy style game, and kind of like a tactical RPG, so like a Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics kind of thing. So yeah, we're somewhere in the middle there.
Okay. And
yeah.
And is this your own company? Do you have other multiple developers?
Yeah, so there's 3 of us working on it. So Stray Basilisk right now is me, Paul Sim, and Andrew Trahan. So we're like a little online collective, I guess. So we met up over Reddit, and we're kind of collaborating on this thing together.
And what did you meet through on Reddit? Was it the I Need a Team, or was it a different one?
I don't remember exactly what the Reddit was, but one of those things. Yeah. So I posted I had a very early prototype with some kind of dodgy gameplay footage, and I kind of posted that out. And these 2 guys, I was lucky enough to have these 2 guys respond to me and be interested in joining in. And then I guess that was somewhere around 2 years ago, and we've kind of been working on it since then.
Awesome. Well, I guess we should go ahead and introduce ourselves. I'm Byron with Successfully Average Gamers, if I could talk, and this is Spencer. He introduced himself.
Yeah, that's me, Spencer. Hope maybe this time there'll only be one of me. We'll find out later tonight.
I wasn't here for the last podcast, but I did hear there seemed to be multiple Spencers.
That's right. Best name, that's why.
All right, well, now that we got the introductions out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the concept for the game, how you came up with it, the steps leading up to building your team and starting creation of your game.
Sure. Okay, so I think the very first conception, believe it or not, came after playing XCOM. And the big kind of twist that we decided to throw into this kind of game gameplay-wise is the idea of stances. So in a normal like JRPG style game, your character will do their skill, their big attack, and then they'll just kind of sit there idly by, kind of hanging around doing nothing till their next turn comes up. And from playing XCOM, there's something called Overwatch. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it basically means that you can set your guy up kind of looking over the battlefield so that if an enemy moves in front of him, he'll take a shot at the enemy kind of between turns. And that was the kind of genesis of this idea of introducing a similar mechanic and kind of mashing that up with like a JRPG style game. So it kind of came out of like prototype I was playing around with, to see how that idea would play out, and it kind of spiraled out from there.
Awesome.
So kind of for all my life I've been working on games and built like countless kind of prototypes, and I really wanted something that I could knuckle down and actually finish and kind of ship.
Mm-hmm.
So it was this kind of prototype which started off playing quite well and seemed promising, and I decided, this is going to be the one that I'm going to kind of stick to and kind of see through to completion.
Awesome. How did you come up with the concepts for the different characters? Like you have your, well, I guess you go ahead and introduce each one of your characters and explain what they do and everything, and how the game mechanics work.
Yeah. Okay. So right now the roster of characters is kind of in flux still. We have 5 characters right now, 5 playable characters, and they mostly came out from playing around with the basic gameplay mechanics and seeing what kinds of stances and kind of style of play kind of naturally emerge from that. You know, once you have this idea of, okay, what stances can we give characters, there's obvious categories of those. There's like, oh, I want to defend my ally, or I want to support and kind of set up combos, or I want to take myself out of harm's way, or I want to do like a buffing kind of aura kind of thing. So the initial kind of classes we had kind of grew out of that. So we have a warrior who is a kind of pretty much a tanky character, so kind of fairly high defense, decent offense, and some abilities which allow him, for example, to stand in front of one of his allies and take hits for them. Second class we have is a ranger who's like a ranged attacker, I believe, and she has abilities for kind of nominating an ally to support, and then whenever her ally jumps in kind of to attack somebody, she'll chip in with a shot as well, kind of from range. We then have a berserker who's kind of I guess the third like martial class, but the third kind of fairly straightforward damage dealing class. But his kind of twist is that he's a bit more reckless and uncontrollable. So he's got a good capacity for kind of dealing damage, but you have to kind of rein him in and kind of babysit him a bit to make sure it kind of pays off fruitfully. So he's got abilities, for example, where he'll take damage himself in exchange for dealing more to an opponent. And his stances, for example, he's got a stance where he can kind of watch over a whole kind of row of the battlefield. And if anybody, we call it tunnel vision, right? So he's kind of focused on this line in front of him. And if any enemy in front of him gets attacked, he'll jump in and attack as well. So it kind of ties into his like single-minded personality, I guess. And it's also like a somewhat difficult to control thing because it's really powerful, but you need to coordinate with the rest of your team to actually pull that off. And if your opponent's kind of smart and kind of agile, they can maneuver their people out of the way and kind of neutralize that quite easily. Yeah, so then we have kind of 2 kind of like utility classes, I guess. So we have an engineer who started off pretty much as a traditional kind of glass cannon mage type character. So he's got like a fireball type thing he can unleash, which is like a high damage move that he needs to charge up for. And his so he's like an elemental kind of damage dealing character. So one of his stances is the ability to levitate, which kind of takes him out of melee range pretty much. And his other stance is to like imbue his allies with elemental damage kind of added onto their attacks. And then the last class is a kind of started off as a healer, but we wanted to kind of twist the traditional healer archetype a bit. And we didn't like the idea that you could just continually heal your party and kind of keep them alive. This is one of the things that kind of comes out from this being a multiplayer focused game. Like in a single player JRPG, it's fine to have a like super effective healing and the ability to just keep reviving your team. But when you're against a human opponent and you want a match to last like a reasonable amount of time, a lot of the kind of conventions of the kind of JRPG genre's gameplay don't necessarily work so well. So we wanted to kind of downplay healing a bit and give her more of a kind of active kind of utility role as well. So she's got an ability which basically lets her give extra turns to her allies, or kind of boost the damage of their attacks. So she's got some like indirect like offensive capability, and the healing is more of like a side trickle feed like passive thing which goes on. Yeah, okay, I think we covered the main 5.
But that brings up, what's your favorite character then? You have all those big ones. You clearly got to have one that you like the best.
Visually, I kind of like the way the Ranger looks right now, like style-wise. I should probably mention that right now the art in the game is mostly kind of placeholder or kind of stock stuff, and we're looking to bring an artist on board in the near future to kind of rework and kind of do a whole set of new extended and like original character designs for us. But the one which kind of already fits what our vision for the game is probably the Ranger. Yeah, and then aside from that, it's normally kind of pairs of characters or synergies which I find interesting more than like a character kind of in isolation. Kind of the whole point of playing effectively is that you need to make efficient use of the stances and kind of combos and chain reactions and stuff. If you just attack kind of once on your turn and then don't set anything else up, you're doing like half the damage output or less, but then somebody who's kind of synergizing and kind of setting up combos and chain reactions.
Right. I did notice in the little bit that I played of it that the synergy and combos were key. I played around with a few different characters. The ones I were my favorite were the ranger, the druid or the healer, and the warrior. And because I understood how to kind of work those together. I tried a different setup of like the berserker or the engineer, and I think I did it with the druid, and I got my ass handed to me by the AI. Like I just couldn't figure out how to make them work. But that I think that adds a lot of depth to the game. I think that's really good. And for any of you listening, if you're a artist and you're looking for a game to work on, get in touch with Jason here.
Hit me up.
So with all of the jobs in the world that you could do, what led you to game development? What led you to the hardships of actually working on a game and all of the code and all of the problems that comes with that? What drove you to do that?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in kind of computers and programming from fairly early on. So I went to school for computer science, and then when I graduated, I did kind of like corporate IT work for a few years. So I did like cloud and data, like back-end stuff. But throughout those kind of like 20 years or so, my life at that point, the one thing which I always went back to and which I always did in my spare time was kind of dabbling with game development. So at a certain point I thought, before I get too old, before I get like too embedded in my like kind of default like IT career, I'm just gonna give it a go and see if I can make a living kind of doing full time. Yeah, because it's been the only like constant hobby, I guess, throughout my life.
And does that lead to like weird situations? I know we touched on it before this technically started, but like, having days off and things, how do you deal with that when technically every day you could be working or every day you could just not be?
Yes. So a lot of that is really helped by having the two other guys on the team to kind of keep me accountable. So we have weekly check-ins, like at least once a week, normally twice a week. Kind of we do like Discord or like Skype meetings, kind of like this, and having like progress to report, and kind of telling each other what we're working on, and having like we have some basic like admin stuff set up for like tracking tasks and kind of assigning them around and stuff. So yeah, having somebody to talk to or to kind of be accountable to really helps with that side of it. And then also recently we've just begun kind of taking Steamhounds to some smaller kind of local gaming events to show it off. And seeing a couple of hundred people come through and play it is really super motivating, right? You see the thing in a whole new light, and it gives you a kind of burst of energy when people are kind of like engaging with it like it's a real thing. And you've been kind of in your lab, like in your zone for so many months, like quite inward facing, working on it. To get external feedback is incredibly motivating.
Right. I can definitely see that. And how is it received? What have you run into?
Well, I've got a notebook here, like full of like kind of playtest notes and kind of feedback and stuff. So the most valuable thing from seeing other people playing the game is that they have a fresh perspective. Mm-hmm. Like when your head's super into a project, you can never kind of see it from an unbiased perspective, right? A lot of its flaws you'll kind of gloss over, or a lot of the kind of awkward things to do with like the UI and kind of how information is presented or how the gameplay kind of flows, you kind of subconsciously like mute all of that stuff out because you're so familiar with the system. So to watch a newbie kind of play it, you get a huge amount of insight. So there's a whole load of like, I guess you call it like user experience stuff, which we've been doing a big push the last few weeks since taking it to an event to kind of iron out a lot of that.
What events have you been able to take it to so far?
So there was an event in Orlando called Orlando Overdrive, which Andrew took it out to. And then in the UK, just a couple of weeks ago, I took it to a local gaming festival called Rapture. So there are a couple of thousand people there maybe.
Awesome.
And we got, yeah.
That's,
So the feedback was generally good. It's being like a tactical game. Something we're trying to work out is like, how do you make somebody's first experience playing it really good? It's like if you get through the first game and kind of understand the mechanics, then I'd be interested to hear what your guys' experience was. Right, the first game might have been a bit confusing in parts, but then the second match, I assume, goes a lot more smoothly. That's generally how people react to it. So we're trying to kind of tune stuff a bit so that that very first experience of someone sitting down for 10 minutes and playing like one match is still kind of satisfying and fulfilling for people.
well, I can definitely say from my experience sitting down and playing the game, like I said, I believe like it made sense even without a tutorial at the beginning necessarily. You know, I read the characters, what they do. I checked out what each move was. You know, the type of game it is allows you time. You know, if you're playing against just the AI.
Well, you're already ahead of about 80% of people by actually reading all of that text before jumping straight.
So, anyways, my experience was actually really good, and like and I found like if a game's too complicated for me, then I'll get tired of it real quick. Like if it's like this is just this, if it becomes work and not fun, if I'm having to work to actually learn it and be any good at it, then I'm thrown off of it real quick because I'm lazy like that. If I'm playing a video game, I'm doing it for fun. I'm not trying to learn anything. So, but my experience was actually really good.
That's awesome. The ideal is like simple but also deep, I guess, or like easy to learn, hard to master. Kind of a cliche.
I definitely got that.
That's really what you want to go for. Awesome. I'm glad that it went down well with you.
What about you, Spencer?
Like how you described it is pretty much exactly how it went for me. I jumped in that first game, like, I don't need to read anything. I've got this. I know how to play these games. I got crushed by the AI. I was like, oh no, this is terrible. But then the second game, I got the gist of it, and I haven't lost again against the AI. And people, that's fine. I think Rez is just a little scared to play against me. He knows he'll lose. But, that's all right.
I just don't want to embarrass him. I don't want to hurt his ego.
Oh, yeah, that would happen. But so it's true that people can just sign up for your Discord, easy peasy, free, and then jump right into the game. That it's all available for them right now for free.
Yeah, exactly. So the demo we have right now, it's kind of simple. It's just like the core system, like the core battle engine. So right now you can play against an AI. So you pick 3 of the 5 characters to form your team, and then you get put straight into a match. Or if you want to play against a human opponent, you kind of click the versus match option, and it gives you a little link. And then you can just paste that into a chat with somebody, and if they click it, they're joined right into the game. It's kind of like joining a Discord server itself, actually.
And can people get to the Discord from the website?
Yeah, so if you go on straybasilisk.com, or if you hit our Twitter page up, the link is all over the place. And as soon as you join the Discord, a bot will kind of DM you the download link and the kind of username and password to get in there.
And so the link to his website is actually down in the description. So if you're interested, just go ahead and go and hit that and join the Discord, and you can start playing right now. Yeah,
so we're trying to kind of set the Discord up as like a community hub and like a matchmaking and lobby kind of thing as well. So rather than spending a lot of time ahead of time to implement all that stuff into the game, we're kind of piggybacking off of Discord to kind of make that kind of convenient. And it we don't quite have enough people in there yet for there to be lively activity all the time. Like there's not always people around kind of playing matches, so we're looking in the near future to kind of set up like scheduled play times each week where everyone can kind of jump on. But feature functionality wise, Discord seems pretty smooth, and we're kind of thinking about maybe going even further with integrating that, maybe running kind of knockout tournaments and stuff like that kind of through the Discord, and kind of orchestrating all of that community event stuff through there.
I think that'd be great.
So does it, where do you have the game stored? Is it just on a server? One of you have it at one of your houses? Is it all online through the cloud?
Yeah, it's all up in the cloud. So my previous kind of life as an IT guy, I was working with a lot of cloud technology and all of that back-end server stuff. So that's all pretty solid and there and kind of working. And in theory, it will scale up if more people jump on. I'm probably inviting disaster by making that statement.
Yeah, I actually work in that field right now.
Okay.
I'm looking to obviously do podcasts and content creation full time, but I actually work in that field right now too. So I totally get that. All of
Yeah.
the server side stuff it's complicated.
Yeah. I mean, it's made it a lot easier because it's like a turn-based game, right? I wouldn't want to take on the challenge of building like a real-time multiplayer thing. That's a whole different kettle of fish. But turn-based, it works fairly well with kind of minimum hassle there.
Yeah.
That's good. So you'll be able to support a bunch of people jumping on. There's not really much to worry about until, like 10,000 people want to play at once. Then
yeah, that's a problem I'd love to be dealing with. So.
That's what everybody wants. Too many people problem.
Yep.
Yeah. So kind of on a similar note to that, like because we want to kind of encourage this like multiplayer PvP thing, that kind of affects other parts of the design as well. Like we're kind of leaning away from like having you like level up characters, because it introduces this whole issue of, okay, you want to now like matchmake with somebody, right, and play a match. And unless the game gets super big and there's millions of people online, it's going to be hard to guarantee that whatever level of progression you're at, you kind of have someone to play against. So it's probably going to end up a bit more like, if you play like Street Fighter or Tekken, right, you have a big menu of characters and you kind of pick them out and then just jump straight in, kind of like on an equal footing. That's pretty much the way we're seeing like the multiplayer go, and having your progression be kind of parallel to that, right? So building up points for your faction, or kind of maybe unlocking new characters as opposed to like leveling up the characters you do have. So that's kind of something we're working on now. Like, what should the progression and kind of like end game and like the long-term play look like, given this kind of matchmaking issue? Yeah, it's kind of tricky, but
that's always a tough call. Like with when Nintendo made ARMS, they just had different abilities that you could basically get, but they're all sort of on a level playing field.
Yeah.
At least some way. But that takes a lot of effort and time that you could put somewhere else.
Yeah, we definitely like to expand the roster of characters so that people don't get tired of just these 5. So my colleagues will kill me for saying this, but we're planning for going for like maybe 10 to 15 kind of characters in the roster.
Oh, wow.
When also, yeah. So right now we're kind of hashing out what exactly those kind of character archetypes and stuff will look like.
Mm.
And we're probably going to be asking our Discord for kind of suggestions and input on feedback on the kind of characters they'd like to see. Mm-hmm. Bring the kind of community into that side of it.
Okay.
Are you taking like specific inspiration from any game where you're making these multiple characters?
It's more like pop culture and media, I guess, maybe more than games necessarily. And also you can have a whole load of variations on like a tanky like warrior type, or like a kind of ranger type. Right? Maybe have like a grenade throwing kind of specialist who does like a load of AoE stuff, or maybe have like a warrior who's more of like an upfront fighter, and then a warrior who's more of like a commander who's kind of like rallying his teammates and kind of boosting them instead. So there are lots of different flavors to the basic kind of archetypes we have now that we can kind of put in there. We've got a whole list of like abilities that we've been kind of playing around with, and which we've implemented and kind of experimented with in the past. And it's, yeah, I don't think we'll have a problem kind of generating enough kind of skills and stances and stuff to fill out that.
That's awesome.
That roster. Balancing and kind of tuning it will be tricky, but.
So to pivot the conversation a little bit, how are you handling the business side? Like, for one, are you working a full-time job right now, or is this your full-time job?
So right now I'm trying to make this my full-time job. So I kind of left my previous job and decided I'll give myself some time based on savings to kind of see if I can get this up and running and make it like a sustainable thing. Because that's what success looks like for me, really, right? It's being able to continue doing this and paying the rent and keeping food on the table and stuff like that.
Totally.
Yeah, so I mean, we're not really raking in the money right now. It's just like a free demo out there. Yeah, no, but I'm giving a go of it and kind of putting my blood, sweat, and tears into the game to try and get it finished into a decent level of quality,
right,
in a reasonable kind of time frame. So we're trying to, for that reason, I guess we're trying to limit the scope and not go like too overboard with the amount of kind of content which we need, so that we can realistically kind of deliver it in a, it's not something we want to spend another 2 years building if we can avoid it.
Right, totally.
Because then I'll need to, go back into work and start doing it as a hobby again, and then that's...
We want to try to avoid that.
Yeah. So do you have an idea of how you're going to be making money with this? Are you going to get like investors in to give you money to finish and polish some stuff? Is it going to be sold? A subscription model?
Yeah, so the main thing we need money for right now is art content, pretty much. So our plan right now, more or less, is to kind of continue like building the community and getting playtest feedback and improving the core of the game, and getting some social media buzz and kind of following going, which would allow us to either find a publisher or investor, or potentially to go down a crowdfunding route. So for either one of those, the first step is to kind of build some kind of buzz around the thing yourself, right? Because it kind of opens those doors for you. And then to find an artist who will, we'd probably commission somebody to kind of do enough artwork to kind of do a Kickstarter, for example. So, all the kind of promo and kind of concept stuff, with the understanding that we would then use the funds raised to pretty much commission the rest of the content. And then we're pretty much looking for like a straightforward one-off purchase model. So we considered like an ongoing subscription model or like microtransaction thing, but it adds a whole another layer of complexity, and it kind of a whole load of constraints on the design. We're more happy just kind of keeping it somewhat small and simple, and just making the best game we can, and then just putting it out there for what we feel like is a fair price.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Rather than working out how to monetize in some like long-term thing.
You might be always be able to do like some sort of content packs with new characters or skins or something like that.
Yeah, we definitely like to support it in some sense, kind of going forwards. Like if it gains some popularity, then we'd look into kind of because there's still that multiplayer element, right? So kind of running some kind of events, or maybe kind of dripping in bits of content like every week or every month. So something which might work quite well is like a challenge level kind of format, right? So every week, for example, we might give you a certain kind of handcrafted battle it starts in a certain kind of state, and your task is then to survive to the end of that, or to who can complete it the fastest, or that kind of thing, because it's relatively cheap, like content-wise, for us to produce, but it kind of keeps the interest going. And then also like the community event side of it. So we're thinking of maybe having some kind of like faction game where the kind of thing that like resets every month maybe, and every month you kind of ally yourself to a faction, and then by competing in multiplayer you kind of try and build your faction's points up to get some kind of reward, like a skin or like a trophy or a flare or something kind of at the end of that.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
Yeah, and kind of another reason why we went with this multiplayer design is that a human opponent is pretty much the cheapest and most effective way to generate content in our minds. Right, to add like another 5 hours of like story to something is a almost incalculable expense, like with art and stuff like that. But if you got a human opponent, then they can keep generating interest, and there'll be some kind of evolving metagame and stuff, and it will hopefully keep some longevity in it.
Right. So do you actually have a company? Do you have a company formed?
So right now, kind of legally, I'm like a sole trader, and the other guys are, well, we're not making money yet, so it's fairly easy. No, we don't have like an LLC formed or anything like that. My advice to anyone in this position, though, is do it. Like, I kind of wish I had, because there are certain like government schemes and like tax exemptions and kind of grants which you can only get if you were a registered company when you started the project.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that we're not now means that we've already missed out on certain kind of financial support which we may have been able to get from the government, pretty much, in the UK at least.
Right.
So I kind of regret not doing that.
So
doesn't the UK like encourage you to have like all UK employees And aren't you spread out a little bit over the world, so you lose out at least to some of those anyway?
Yeah, there are a whole load of like conditions and criteria about like the content of the game and its kind of like cultural value and stuff like that. But it's not as hard as you would think to tick enough of those boxes to get some kind of support or like tax rebates and exemptions and stuff.
Okay.
So we've already spoke about monetization and stuff. So the idea is you're going to charge one base price and then maybe you release some content packs down the road.
Yeah.
What is your preference as far as would you prefer to have a publisher or to do a crowdfunding type thing?
It really depends on the publisher and the kind of relationship we would form with them, right? And kind of because it's not just about the money in that kind of business relationship, right? There's other stuff they can offer, like expertise for one. Because none of us have gone through the whole process of publishing and marketing a game. Like none of us are marketing gurus, and it's kind of I mean, it's not something I'm an expert in, and I kind of dread that side of it, to be honest. So if somebody comes in with a good proposal and we think it would add kind of value, then yeah, that could well work.
Do you have a publisher in mind?
No.
Okay.
Simple answer.
Yeah. Okay, so in the simplest terms, how would you describe this game to someone that obviously knows nothing about it? What do you say that says this is our game?
Okay. That's a really hard question. Like you often get asked to give like the 30-second elevator pitch, and I kind of already did it at the beginning.
Right. Okay.
Somewhat.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions on the business side, Spencer?
No, I think you answered it pretty well. Like it sounds like it's something you're more worried about. A lot of things are coming down the line, and you'll get to them when you get to them. That's what it seemed like.
Yeah, I mean, we have a kind of roadmap for this stuff, but we're aware of our own ignorance of certain things, right? So we can't set everything in stone. We kind of have to play it by ear somewhat. But we definitely like to find an artist, a prospective artist, kind of within the next 6 months or so, and then maybe in a year from now, in the kind of summer season of events and stuff next year, that's if we were to do a fundraising campaign, that's about when it would probably kick off. Yeah.
So what's been the most difficult part of the development so far? What have you just banged your head against so far in creating this game?
Again, it's probably the kind of everything but the implementation of the game itself. So the whole kind of marketing and PR side, trying to get people playing it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, things are starting to pick up now. We're starting to get a bit more interest and feedback, and people are generally liking it. But we're still not at that critical mass where, for example, there's always somebody online looking for a battle. That would be a nice kind of milestone to get to, hopefully in the near future. In terms of the game itself, after the initial concept, like things kind of evolved fairly smoothly. There's still some big questions we have, like what exactly the kind of single player content should look like. Because we're planning to have some form of like single player in there to kind of act as a tutorial for the game, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
But exactly what form that should take and what kind of progression should look like, given that it's probably not going to be like characters getting more powerful, which is kind of default. Get XP, level up, get higher stats, get new abilities thing. Like, what do we replace that with?
Right.
We have ideas, but we don't really have answers yet. I don't know if that's the hardest thing, but it's what we're kind of struggling with or thinking about at the moment. So it's kind of fresh in my mind.
What was the influence for the design of this game, or was there an influence?
Yeah, so it's one of the big influences, probably Final Fantasy X in terms of like the JRPG side of it. That's probably the most direct influence. In the sense that like turn order is very important. I don't know if either of you guys kind of played that game. There are a lot of situations where you have to kind of you see like a preview of the turn order, and when you're like selecting ability, you can kind of see that reshuffle to kind of preview how the order will change. So that's kind of a big influence which we took in. And that becomes super important with the stances, right? Because you've got all these combos and chain reactions, turn order becomes more important than it maybe would in games without that kind of system. And then XCOM as well was kind of a source of like initial inspiration. And then there's other things like mostly things we've found afterwards, you know, since having like an early prototype and then looking around for stuff which was similar, which we've kind of begun to draw inspiration from more recently. So in terms of how the kind of battle is laid out, it's kind of similar to Mega Man Battle Network. Mm-hmm. Also, we all love Darkest Dungeon recently, and how they kind of bring in like the theme and the kind of story side of it. Like we'd like to aspire to like some of the cool stuff they have there, like the little characters giving quips and kind of dialogue at the right moment, and they're very kind of economical use of the art assets to kind of make quite a satisfying experience. But if you kind of break it down, yeah, they were quite clever in how they used art and kind of limited the amount of art content, but you know, you don't really notice it. Like every character's attack animation in that is like one frame. It's just like a static image, right? And it's all done with like effects and kind of motion and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's kind of been an inspiration.
So then the kind of artist you're looking for, are you looking for one that has a similar style to Darkest Dungeon, or are you looking for a whole different way to go?
Yeah, so right now the art style that we have is kind of like pixel art in a 3D backdrop, and we like the way that that looks, and that's kind of our default assumption for how, you know, the vision of the game will look in the future. I mean, potentially if an artist comes on board and has a really strong idea and can kind of mock up some stuff and it kind of blows us away, then we're open to potentially changing that and maybe having a more kind of vectory or kind of, I don't know how exactly to describe it, I'm not an artist, but a more, not pixelated, right, but like a more high fidelity kind of thing, more like a Paper Mario thing maybe. But we definitely like the idea of sprites in a 3D environment.
All right. So do you think, no, I'll just leave it open-ended. What do you think's the most fun part of the game, like when you're playing a match?
Okay, I think kind of inherently to the system, when you set up a combo and kind of execute that, it kind of feels pretty awesome. Like it kind of makes you feel really smart when you pull off some like multi-stage thing or like rack up some ridiculous amount of damage in a single turn. And then when you bring another human player into the mix, the kind of battle of wits element, it almost becomes like puzzle-like, right? And you feel like there's almost always a right move to make. You know, we don't want someone to feel like they lost and didn't know what they could have done better, right? Or just feel like the RNG cheated them or something. So when you either pull off some awesome combo or kind of trick your opponent into falling for a trap, or you know, when they set something up and then you skillfully dismantle it, and like you to their whole thing that they were building up with their stances, it's that angle of it really. So that's kind of one of the pillars of the game that which we, whenever we make a decision, we kind of evaluate it in terms of, does it feed into like helping you set up cool combos with interesting synergies and kind of reactions and stuff. Yeah, so it's watching all of that stuff, your master plan kind of unfold.
And you like touched on this a little bit there. So that whole like mind battle with Trinity, was that sort of the reason that there's not a lot of RNG in the game? That a lot of it's like 11 to 13 damage and not a whole bunch. There's not a huge difference in a lot of things. I think the most is probably the Ranger's 70% miss, or the most RNG there is.
Yeah. So in earlier versions of the game, every character had like an evasion stat, and every attack had a chance to miss. But in like kind of simplifying it somewhat and kind of tightening things, we kind of got rid of that. So right now the Ranger has an ability which lets her kind of have a chance to dodge, but that's kind of the exception rather than the rule, right? Yeah, so we've generally moved to like tighten up the RNG ranges, because sometimes RNG is fun when it, you know, it can add tension and that kind of little build up and moment of uncertainty, especially when somebody's at like 10 health and your attack's going to do like 9 to 11 damage, right? Those are kind of interesting moments. But at the same time, we don't want it to take away, you know, it's a tactical game and it's kind of puzzle-like, and if there's too much RNG, then you don't feel like you're able to like plan and execute something, because you're too dependent on randomness. I mean, there's other purposes for randomness, right? Like an interesting one is that it broadens the range of like skill levels of players who can play against each other. Right? If there's no randomness, then in theory the best player will always win. Whereas if there's a bit of randomness, then you can have a satisfying match with somebody who's fairly close to you. You know, it kind of expands the number of players you have open to you.
Right. And too much RNG can make you want to punch your monitor.
Unless it's going your way, then it's like, oh yeah, everything's coming at me.
Right.
Yeah. We also like the idea that the amount of RNG can depend on the character archetype. So the warrior, for example, has basically none. Like his attacks generally do like a fixed amount of damage, whereas the berserker has like a wider range of possibilities, which kind of reinforces their personality as being a more kind of dangerous but kind of wild character. Yeah, so there's that side of it as well. Yeah, nice. And again, in the initial prototype, we had, like most like JRPGs, we had people with like hundreds of health points and attacks doing like 50 or 100 damage. And we pretty much just divided everything by 10 across the board to kind of make everything feel a bit less kind of sloppy and loose. And again, kind of lean slightly more towards the kind of tactical puzzle-like side of it.
All right, nice. And you think like simplifying it definitely made the game better? Like working to try and boil it down away from those hundreds and hundreds of damage down to like double-digit ones like that?
Yeah, because it's fun to deal like 500 damage, but given the tactical nature of it, it kind of doesn't feed into that too well.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, we simplify things where we can and where it doesn't like remove interesting options for the players. So simplifying is good as long as it doesn't make the game kind of boring or like too simple, right? It's removing complexity which doesn't actually improve the experience in some way. That's pretty much what we're trying to prune from the system.
So what are your goals with this game? Like perfect world? What are your goals and aspirations for this game?
Yeah. I kind of mentioned that the measure of success for me would be getting it finished and out there. I mean, that's the first milestone, right? Like, because that probably requires getting interest and then getting funding. So that's no mean feat to even get something finished and released at all. And then if it will be successful enough to allow us to begin working on the next game, ideally like as a full-time job, I'll be over the moon if that's the case. That would be the dream come true pretty much. And then anything beyond that, like if there's critical acclaim for it and if people really love it, then that's awesome as well. But my optimistic goal is that it will pay the bills basically and allow us to work on games all the time.
Right.
So what essentially the goal for this game is to fund the next one.
Well, it's to allow us to be game developers, right?
Yeah.
And for that to be a sustainable like lifestyle or career. So ultimately, it's not that we don't want this game. Yeah, it's not that we don't care about this game, because we do. We've put years of our life and kind of poured our hearts and souls into it. But that's like the aspiration ultimately. Right? It's for people to like it enough that.
Sorry, that wasn't what I meant. I didn't mean like, oh, you don't care about this game, you just want to do the next one. I meant that it's going to be so good that it's like, we made so much money, we don't have to worry about working, we can just jump into another game. We got a huge fan base, we've got all we need already going for us. Right? There's this guy named Spencer, he's on our forum, every night saying, hey, who's playing the game? Just sends links, spamming them. I think we might have to ban him, I don't know.
Well, I consider banning him all the time, but so what are your plans for the future? Personally, as the owner of Stray Basilisk, did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. That's kind of an issue, right? Some people find it a bit awkward. Pronunciation of it. I don't know. This is the kind of thing that I've always loved doing, right? And like I say, it's the only thing that's been like a constant in my life that I'll always come back to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's to, carry carry on with this. Like any game developer has a whole crap ton of ideas kind of in notebooks and stuff. So there's no shortage of like stuff I'd like to work on in the future.
Right. Well, I mean,
Like
the
there's a
creation.
lifetime's worth. There's more than a lifetime's worth of kind of stuff which I'd like to start working on.
Right. Well, I mean, the creation of video games, it's an art. It really is. So, game developers, I really believe they're artists, and they're not necessarily with a pen and paper or with a paintbrush, but, they're still creating art. And I know that people who have that desire, it's like a passion with them.
Yeah.
So I
No,
imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, actually, because I consider myself kind of a creative person, but not really an artistic one in the traditional sense. Like I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't play an instrument. So I've always used kind of technology as my means of expression and kind of being creative. So I often liken programming it's kind of like architecture, right? It's like a technical engineering kind of discipline, but there's like a functional side of it, right? You need the building not to collapse, but there's also a whole kind of artistic angle as well. Like you're not just making something functional, you're thinking about how people will interact with it and what their like experience of going through it will be. Yeah, so it kind of scratches that creative itch for me as well, like in a big way.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Did you have any more questions there, Spencer?
Yeah. I was gonna say, you said some advice for newcomers was start a company because then you can take advantage of a lot of stuff like before you start your game. Like a lot of government grants and other things. Is there any other advice you give to people that are looking to start out or not sure if they want to become developers?
Yeah, if you got a good job, then it's perfectly fine to like do it in the evenings, kind of as a hobby, until you're kind of certain you're at a point where it makes sense to kind of break away in doing that. Because I'm under no illusions that it's like an easy industry to be successful in. Like as an indie dev, there was a statistic recently where it's only like 7% to 10% of Steam releases earn enough to like pay a year's salary or something. I can't remember the statistic exactly, but it's like less than 10% draw in enough kind of revenue to be like a sustainable business. So yeah, it's kind of difficult. But if it's something you really love doing, then you're probably already playing around with it anyway, and you probably would continue to do so anyway. So yeah.
Right.
I don't know if that's super insightful advice, but
So are you planning to release this on Steam? Is there going to be multiple platforms?
yeah. So right now the game it works for Mac, Linux, and PC, and we're planning to release on Steam and probably itch as well. There's potential for a mobile version in the future. Like the game would work fairly well on mobile, and right now we have a sketchy prototype that runs on Android. There's a whole lot of like UI stuff that would need to change, but fundamentally it would kind of work. So again, that's a possibility. So we may look to porting it to like Android and iOS.
Yeah, I could definitely see that being successful on mobile. Being turn-based. I mean, I usually the biggest problem for me with mobile games is controls. Like it's not natural. But a turn-based game like that is totally feasible. I feel like.
Yeah. One of the problems you have with mobile is, how long should a match be if it's for a mobile game, right?
That's true.
That's a kind of difficult thing. Like if you've got like a 20-minute battle, which right now the average length of battle is about 10 to 15 minutes. It kind of depends on how good the players are and kind of what the matchup is like. But on the high end, it's like maybe 20 minutes. And on mobile, I feel like that may be kind of stretching it.
Yeah,
I'm not an expert on that, but yeah. So you might have to kind of trim things down there as well and kind of trim some of the fat off and make it shorter so someone can play while they're standing in line somewhere, or you want to have a unit of play that somebody can do in that moment when they whip out their phone or their tablet and then kind of finish it and put it away and kind of be satisfied.
Right.
Yeah. So do you think, is that your like ideal time, that 10 to 15 minutes, that's what you guys wanted? You're like, that's a good match. You want to keep it around there, or are you thinking of maybe trying to change that up besides just for mobile?
Yeah, so some of the recent changes have been to kind of increase the pace of the match somewhat. So to bring it down from maybe it was about average of 20 before to average of like 14, 15 minutes or something now. Yeah, there's certain things we want more than like if the match extends and it's kind of really epic and fun, then that's okay. Like if people have an epic like hour long battle because they're managing somehow to stay alive, then that as long as it's fun, then that's cool. But often what a long match means is like things are dragging. What we don't want is for everyone to know who's going to win, but the match to still go on for another 20 minutes. That's the worst kind of possible outcome.
Right.
So it's not so much length, but like if someone's going to win, then they should just win quickly, or there should be a possibility for a comeback. But yeah, we just want to avoid that kind of long, drawn out, death grind kind of slog.
Rage quits.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off topic, but I've been curious. I feel like now's a good time to ask. There was a rumor last Tuesday that you applied to get accepted on Twitch. So the game, did it go through? Do you know if it did? It registered on Twitch?
I'm still going through that process.
Oh,
man.
we hit him with the blindside question.
That's right.
So what we do here, this is real reporting.
Yeah, I don't think it's like too difficult to do. You kind of need to sign up through another website and get kind of listed there. I don't think there's a big barrier doing it. It's just it needs to be like manually approved and stuff, so that kind of takes a few days.
So if we're doing one of our stream nights and we wanted to play your game, is that allowed?
Yeah, that's encouraged, I would say. Yeah. If anyone's interested in streaming it and wants some kind of help, then any way we can help out with that, then obviously we're keen to do that. So it's possible to like spectate on matches and stuff like that as well. So if you've got two people and you want to have like the neutral point of view,
oh, okay.
we kind of support that kind of stuff as well.
That's an interesting addition. I like that.
Yeah, we thought it might work nicely for like competitions and tournaments and stuff, right?
Right.
Like if you have because there's not that many like turn-based multiplayer games like this. Like the main one I'm aware of is Pokemon,
right?
Like the old Pokemon RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
But there really aren't that many other like JRPG style things which allow like a competitive multiplayer. So we're thinking about it'd be nice if in the future people would have competitions and kind of tournaments in Steamhounds, right? That would be pretty awesome. So we kind of built in some simple features to kind of support that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, so you have two people and then a third screen projected with.
It's kind of like a more, almost more in-depth. Well, now I'm blanking. I can't remember what that game is that you can play with the cards that you get, and I can't remember now. Yes, Hearthstone. Thank you. Oh my God. But yeah, there's large tournaments on that, and I could see that definitely for this game.
Yeah. Oh, you were asking before about inspirations, and now that you mentioned Hearthstone, it's definitely something we're looking at, because they're the masters of how their kind of interface is presented.
Mm-hmm.
Right, all the little animations and little sparkly things and kind of movements and stuff are done kind of so perfectly in that game that we often look to that to try and kind of work out how we can solve our little, how do you present a little bit of information, or how do you show that some reaction has triggered or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Hearthstone's pretty kind of masterful at that thing.
Yeah, they are. They are. There's not a lot going on, but it keeps you engaged.
Yeah.
So, as we're wrapping up here, is there anything that you want to say to the audience to sell your game? This is your pitch. This is your, this is what we're doing. This is why you should look to buy our game.
Yeah, I would say jump in and try it out, right? What have you got to lose? Jump into the Discord. I think we're beginning to build up a nice kind of community there, and we're always looking to kind of interact with people kind of one-on-one and get feedback.
Mm-hmm.
The devs are always on there and like looking to, always happy to kind of play against the community. Yeah, so try it out, and we think you'll like it. And then, yeah, we don't need to do the hard sell, I don't think. I mean, it's kind of a niche thing, right? If you see some gameplay footage, you'll probably know if it's the kind of game that's for you or not. So if you like any of the old school kind of Final Fantasy games, or like Fire Emblem or anything like that, I think it's worth your time to check it out at least.
Spencer and I are also in that Discord, so if you want somebody
Yes.
to just beat on, you can feel free to at message us, and we'll hop on if we can and get a couple of matches in with people.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm getting good with the Berserker. I don't think I'll get beaten down that easy. Some good combos going.
I don't know. I like that Ranger and Warrior. That combo's pretty good.
Yeah.
And also, anyone, if you're not interested in kind of jumping in at this early stage and playing the alpha demo, if you follow at Stray Basilisk on Twitter, we kind of regularly post updates and screenshots and gameplay footage and stuff, so you can follow along. And if and when the game reaches a point that you feel like jumping in, then yeah, go ahead and do that.
While we're talking about that, where are the places that everyone can reach you? You mentioned Twitter. Where else can they go to follow you, get in touch with you? So far we have Twitch. I'm sorry, we have Twitter and we have Discord.
Yeah, those are probably kind of the main places which we have some sort of kind of presence on right now. So yeah, if you want to kind of like follow our progress, then Twitter's a good place. If you want to actually come and chat to us and give feedback on the game, then jump into the Discord.
Okay, and we'll put those links down in the description. Also, you can reach their Discord via their website at Stray Basilisk. It's a tongue twister, and that's also already down in the description.
Awesome.
So this is Resbans and Spencer and Jason. And if there are any last minute questions, Spencer?
No, I think that's it. The game, like it's the first, I'll say go for 2 matches at least. Like the first one, it might be weird, but it looks fun, but it plays a lot more fun than it seems like it would. Like it's very addicting. I wanted to keep going for a while, but
it is. I agree. We look at a lot of different games when we're doing this, and there's a lot of amazing developers out there. But like I said, this is in its early stage, but it's already pretty polished. It didn't crash on me. Everything's understandable. It's really done well. Jason and his team there are doing some great work. So be sure to go check them out. And this is Excessively Average Gamers, In Depth with Indies, signing out.
all right.
Thanks a lot, guys, for giving me the chance to talk to you.